The Dallas Stars now know who their next opponent will be. They'll take on the Seattle Kraken in round 2 of the Stanley Cup Playoffs. And on today's episode, we'll be talking about how the Stars and Kraken got to this point, and we'll also be talking about why the Dallas Stars should be the new favorites to win the Stanley Cup. All of this and more coming up on today's episode of Locked On Stars.
Your Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. Welcome back to the Locked On Stars podcast, the only daily podcast covering the Dallas Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Dane Lewis, your local expert on all things Dallas Stars hockey, coming to you on this Monday, May 1st. And whether this is your first time here or you are a recurring listener, thank you for stopping by and for making Locked On Stars your first listen every single day. Appreciate all of you everydayers out there. Be sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts at. We're always free and available no matter where or how you choose to listen. It's a new week here at Locked On Stars, and seemingly a lot of quote-unquote resets happening across the NHL as we're about to begin a new slate of playoff series here in the Stanley Cup playoffs. A lot of round twos about to get underway with a little bit left to be taken care of tonight in the Eastern Conference. One more Game 7 to go between the Rangers and the Devils. But Sunday was very nice for everyone in Dallas and everyone associated with the Stars because we got to sit back and enjoy two fantastic Game 7s, knowing that our team, the Stars, had already clinched their spot in the next round of the postseason. The Stars take care of business on Saturday, or not Saturday night, but rather Friday night against the Minnesota Wild, and will be relatively well-rested heading into round 2, which is very big for the team in terms of just recovery, health. We don't really still know when we can expect Joe Pavelski back out on the ice, but we know that he traveled with the team to Minnesota for Game 6. He's been skating, he's been practicing, so it seems like we're getting near to the potential return of Pavelski to the ice in game situations. And hopefully this additional time off for the team would allow for a smoother recovery for Joe Pavelski, as well as everyone else involved, as it was a very physically demanding series against the Minnesota Wild. And the Stars' next opponent, of course, the Seattle Kraken, who will be coming off pretty minimal rest, playing late into Sunday night, high altitude in Denver, and then they will be heading to Dallas for Game 1, which will be on Tuesday night at 8:30 p.m. Central Time at the American Airlines Center. So no rest for the weary if you are the Seattle Kraken, coming off of an intense 7-game series against the defending Stanley Cup champion Avalanche. Incredible that they were able to pull off that upset. I know a lot of people here in Dallas are excited about the idea of not really having to take on Colorado, which is a relief. And that's no disrespect to the Kraken, but the Avalanche, I've been saying all season, that's a team that no matter what their regular season production or what their regular season output looked like, it's a team you don't want to bump into in the playoffs because they will cause a lot of trouble. And they certainly did cause a lot of trouble for the Seattle team, but Seattle was able to withstand it, and they were able to advance despite the efforts of Colorado throughout the entirety of that series. And the Stars are in a really nice spot because we had seen all the reports that the coaching staff would be preparing for either result of what we got on Sunday night, ready to take on either Colorado or ready to take on Seattle. And you best believe, just with how we've seen this coaching staff operate, that the Stars, I think, are going to be well prepared going into this series. And they, of course, should have plenty of confidence, as well as I stated the last time that we put something out late Friday night, early Saturday morning, that the Stars, if they can get past this intense, physically demanding, physically draining series against the Minnesota Wild, I think they can hang with just about anybody. And the Seattle Kraken, while they do certainly have some very physically, physical players, physically, intimidating players, if you will, Jamie Alexiak, former Dallas Star, amongst that defensive core, Seattle, they're not as physical as the Minnesota Wild. Again, they have guys that can certainly bang along the boards and guys that can finish their checks. It's not to say that they aren't going to come out and play a physical style of game, but this is going to be a drastically different series just in terms of the physicality and how these two teams are going to have to look to beat each other, because I think both teams are coming off series where they were playing polar opposite opponents and now they have to get prepared for one another. But Dallas has had more time to prepare and get ready for their opponent. I think they were doing a decent amount of preparation for both teams, whereas Seattle, they weren't sure if they were going to be advancing to round two. So they didn't really have time to focus on a future opponent. They had to focus on the task at hand, and that was getting past the Colorado Avalanche. And so you know that the Stars are going to be excited, fired up, and ready to defend home ice here in round two. We knew that round one was guaranteed home ice advantage for the Stars, but we weren't sure if we were going to be getting that for the rest of the postseason just because of the standings. But now they'll get it for really, this does seem like the final time, I believe, that they'll be getting home ice advantage in the postseason, but it's absolutely massive to get it past round one. And I think it did play not a massive difference in the first round series against Minnesota, but I think it did factor in a little bit, especially, you lose a shocker in game one in overtime. Well, at least you still get to play in front of your home crowd in game two. And the Stars were, of course, able to pick up that win. And then, of course, game five was also big in terms of swinging the momentum back in Dallas's favor. And so I think there's a lot to be said about home ice advantage for the Stars this playoffs. It's been kind of a weird postseason where a lot of the road teams are finding a ton of success. We see Florida and Seattle both win game sevens as the road team. The Edmonton Oilers close out their series in game six in Los Angeles as the road team. I mean, it's all over. It's very inconsistent. And home ice advantage is not always a gimme for the teams in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But for the Stars, I think it'll be a good thing despite their success on the road throughout the season. And I'm excited. I'm excited for this series. You can't take the Seattle Kraken team lightly. I know people are excited that, we're not playing the Avalanche. We don't have to take on the defending Stanley Cup champions. But Seattle just took them down. And so they certainly deserve the respect of Dallas and the rest of the NHL community for accomplishing that feat, because no one gave them a chance. I certainly didn't think they were going to win that first round series. Thought it was nice that they were able to pick up a few wins here and there, but they shocked the world, and it's impressive. So it's not necessarily going to be an easy series. It's going to be a very different series than what we saw in round one against Minnesota. But Dallas needs to find a way to bring the intensity and carry it over from that first round series with or without Joe Pavelski. This team has to be geared up and ready to go. And even with the extended time off, they need to not, be sluggish when they come out on the ice for game one on Tuesday, which, you get to this point in the playoffs, you get past round one, and this is where it really starts to set in like, okay, I think every team kind of has that belief that they really do have a shot at this. I think every team that makes it to the playoffs has that belief, but now that some of these teams have been cut out and it's, the margin for error gets smaller, and this Stars roster is filled with guys that have been to the postseason before, that have been on deep runs. They've been to the Cup final. They know what it takes to win, and they know that coming out slow in game one on Tuesday night could be detrimental to the success of the season. And I expect that leadership group to lead the way. I expect Ben, Sagan, Pavelski, if he's playing, Ottinger, Hintz, Lindell. Guys that have been around this club for the past few seasons, or, the past decade, some of those guys. I expect them to take the reins, take control, and bring a ton of energy in game one for what should be an exciting and thrilling series between the Dallas Stars and the Seattle Kraken. We're going to take a little bit more of a deep dive here and take a bird's eye view look at the Stanley Cup playoffs, because the NHL feels so wide open and it kind of feels hard to pinpoint a favorite. So it feels like that begs the question, should the Dallas Stars be considered the favorites now in the Stanley Cup playoffs? We'll talk a little bit more about that coming up next. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by our friends at Athletic Greens. With one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens product AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, nervous system, your immune system, energy, recovery, focus, and aging. Tons of people take some kind of multivitamin, and it's important to choose one with high-quality ingredients that your body will actually absorb. AG1 is a small micro habit with big benefits. It's one thing you can do every single day to take great care of yourself. And right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day, and that's it. There's no need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. I want to thank you again for making the Locked On Stars podcast your first listen every single day. If you're new to the Locked On Stars podcast, we post daily Dallas Stars content Monday through Friday, especially here in the playoffs, where every game matters, every shift matters, every goal, every save, it all matters. And this is an exciting time to be a Stars fan as they gear up for their second round series against the Seattle Kraken beginning tomorrow. It just feels like a quick turnaround. We went on Sunday from not really knowing what to expect in round 2 to, all right, 24 hours from now, or less than 24 hours by the time you're hearing this, it's going to be go time. It's going to be exciting to have the first 2 games of this series at the AAC. That building is going to be absolutely electric for those first 2 games. But take a look at the Stanley Cup playoffs, and it's an interesting picture because we saw 2 historic upsets on Sunday night. Of course, the record-setting Boston Bruins fall to the President's Trophy curse. Yet another team that wins the President's Trophy but is unable to even make it to their conference final or the Stanley Cup finals. The Bruins get stunned by the Florida Panthers at home in overtime. And of course, the Colorado Avalanche fall at home as well in Game 7 to the Seattle Kraken, who their first playoff appearance, they've won their first playoff series. And it's insane to think that one of those upsets happened, let alone 2 of them within just mere hours of one another. But now it leaves the NHL in this weird place where it feels so wide open now, because all season the story has been, well, it's going to be the Bruins and whoever makes it out of the West, and that's that. And the Bruins were probably expected to win that series regardless of who comes out of the Western Conference. But the Bruins are gone now, and even on the West, injuries, despite missing Landeskog, if they can get to the postseason, they're probably a lock to make it to the Stanley Cup Finals. They're too good. They're too deep. Makar, McKinnon, Rantanen, those guys are going to carry the load, and they're going to get the Avalanche back to the Stanley Cup Finals for the second consecutive season. And now they're gone. The Tampa Bay Lightning, who have been to the Stanley Cup Finals for the past 3 seasons, they're gone. And so where does this leave us? Who's the favorite now to win the Stanley Cup Finals? Who should be considered the favorites? Should it be the Dallas Stars? And of course, this is going to sound biased coming from someone hosting a podcast about the Dallas Stars, but I think there's a pretty good argument for it. I say yes. They arguably have the best goalie left in the postseason. Some of the best goalies in the league have been eliminated in round 1. Ilya Sorokin, New York Islanders, he's out. Andrei Vasilevsky is out. Even in the Western Conference, Philip Gustafsson had a nice start, but he's gone. Alexander Georgiev, who had a phenomenal season, his first season in Colorado with the Avalanche, he's no longer in the series, or in the postseason, rather. Jake Ottinger is still around, and he's a big reason why the Stars have found themselves in the position that they're currently in. I don't think it's too big a stretch to say that he's the best goalie left. I know we've seen some good performances from guys like Igor Shesterkin, Antti Ranta, Freddie Anderson for the Carolina Hurricanes, Stuart Skinner up in Edmonton. Some good goalies left, but Jake Ottinger has arguably been the best one. They have the NHL playoffs current leading goal scorer, Rope Hintz, hasn't played a game since Friday against the Minnesota Wild, but is still sitting atop the leaderboard with 12 points. Pretty impressive. Leading the way above guys like Mitch Marner, Leon Draisaitl, Matthew Tkachuk, Connor McDavid, Tyler Bertuzzi, Austin Matthews, Rope Hintz is above all of those guys right now in points, and again, has not played since Friday night. They have the leading point scorer. They have maybe the best defenseman left in the postseason, at least top 3. No argument there, I think. You look at the defenseman left, Miro Heiskanen, maybe not the most electric point getter, although he is in the top 10 in points with 6 here in the postseason, but also does so much defensively. He just helped shut down Kirill Kaprizov and that, buzzing Minnesota offense. He's still around. I mean, the Stars, this team has depth. That's been the biggest pro for them all season, is that they can roll four lines and they have this elite defenseman in Miro Heiskanen leading the way defensively, but also some pretty nice penalty killing defensemen as well. Guys like Esa Lindell, guys like Yanni Hakanpää. I know we talked about on Friday night that Ryan Suter has actually had a pretty nice playoff run up to this point. The decor, it's been shaky at times. It's been imperfect at times, but I think they're starting to get some things figured out and they're starting to play a lot cleaner around the crease. And so if you mix that with the performance of Jake Ottinger, that makes it really difficult to make an argument against the Stars to be the favorites to win the West and potentially win the whole thing. I mean, because you just look across the board, it feels so wide open because we haven't really seen any convincing wins. I know Carolina and that Islander series, it was a relatively short series, and this is not a discredit to the Carolina Hurricanes, who are a very good team. But I feel like that was maybe more of a reveal of the shortcomings of the Islanders and the Hurricanes being able to exploit those. But other than that, I mean, all these series have been tight 6-7 game series. Doesn't really feel like anyone has claim of being the best team. But I feel like when you look at the Stars close, if you zoom in on everything, the pieces are there. This should be the favorite to win the Stanley Cup Finals now that Boston and Colorado and I guess Tampa, although they didn't look as good as Boston or Colorado throughout the postseason. But now that those teams are out of the equation, those teams are out of the picture, it's wide open. And this Dallas team absolutely has the pieces to get there. They have the coach that knows what it takes to get there, a coach who is hungry to get there and win it all. Plenty of players who have also been on the doorstep. They've been oh so close to hoisting Lord Stanley, but have fallen short. And they have the pieces put in place. It's just a matter of executing and playing their style of hockey, which we saw them do in games 5 and 6 against the Minnesota Wild. And if the Stars play the way they did in those games, it's going to be hard to take them down in a best-of-7 series. Well, we're going to take a quick moment and dive into one specific area of intrigue in this series against the Dallas Stars and the Seattle Kraken. We'll talk a little bit about the goalie matchup, Jake Ottinger versus Philip Grubauer, in just a moment. You've heard it 1,000 times, and you're going to hear it again, but the way that you win postseason series is special teams and goaltending in the NHL. And both the Dallas Stars and Seattle Kraken had some pretty nice goaltending on display for them in their first round series, respectively. And they've had, both of these goaltenders have had drastically different seasons. You look at Jake Ottinger and Philip Grubauer, the starters for both these teams. Jake Ottinger in the regular season, a 2.37 goals against average and a 9.19 save percentage. Philip Grubauer, 2.85 goals against average and an 8.95 save percentage. That's really been one of the knocks against the Seattle team. And Grubauer is a veteran of the league. He's been around. He's been on a Stanley Cup winning team. He was actually Braden Holtby's backup in 2018 when the Washington Capitals won the Stanley Cup that summer. And so this is a guy who's been on deep Stanley Cup playoff runs. He was Colorado's goalie for the longest time, got plenty of playoff reps with them, but the numbers just really haven't been there to say that this is, a guy that's going to carry a team to playoff success. But here we are with the Seattle Kraken just having taken down the defending Stanley Cup champions in 7 games with Philip Grubauer leading the way. He was phenomenal in that first round series against Colorado. And so you can take a look at those regular season numbers. I think there's area for concern, but he's starting to pick up his game. Whereas you look at a guy like Jake Ottinger, who is kind of on a steady line where he was really good in the regular season. And maybe it's a steady line that actually starts to slant up a little bit here in the playoffs. But I think this is going to be such an important aspect of this series. Can Jake Ottinger, one, continue to find a way to elevate his game? We've never seen him past this point. We've only ever seen him in round 1 of the playoffs, but now the lights are going to start to shine a bit brighter. The stage is getting bigger. The stakes are getting higher. So you have to imagine that Jake Ottinger is going to have to find a way to elevate his game to that next level. He's got to find that next gear, which I believe he can do. But that's going to be the question for him, is can he continue to deliver these phenomenal, outstanding performances in the face of grave danger, if you will, with it getting deeper and deeper in the postseason. And then on the other side, can Philip Grubauer come out and show that round 1 wasn't just a fluke? because it's hard to say that it was. I mean, that's a really good Colorado team. I know that they had their injuries. I know they were missing pieces, but they still had some of their best pieces. And Makar, McKinnon, Rantanen, Lehkonen. I mean, that was not an offensive, drought for the Colorado Avalanche. I mean, they were missing pieces, but that was not a team looking for offensive production or looking for weapons, if you will, offensively. And yet Philip Grubauer found a way to shut them down in order to get his team to advance to round 2. So can he come out and show that wasn't a fluke, or will we see a return to form for, if you will, for Grubauer for what was a pretty lackluster regular season, a sub 900 save percentage and allowing nearly 3 goals a game? I know the Stars saw some of that whenever they matched up with the Seattle Kraken, and I think that was the big difference in a lot of the games. The Stars winning 2 of those 3 matchups against Seattle in the regular season. I think at times it did come down to goaltending, and I think that's going to be the case here in this series. I mean, Grubauer, like I said, is a cup champion, but is the output sustainable for an entire playoff run? Is that a guy that you expect to carry you deeper and deeper into the playoffs when you start to face better opponents, when your team is tired, when your team has injuries? Can he continue to step up? And I think there's even more interesting numbers to look at. It can carry over a little bit to the defensive core as well. Dallas this regular season had a plus 67 goal differential, and Seattle plus 33. So we all know that the Stars offense took a big leap this season, and they were almost always able to match or outproduce the offensive production for, whoever they were playing. Whereas Seattle, I mean, plus 33 goal differential certainly isn't bad. We've seen teams make it to the postseason with negative goal differentials. So plus 33 is certainly nothing to scoff at. But, I mean, you just look at the numbers, and the Stars historically over this past entire season have been much better at, one, protecting their crease and getting saves, but also giving their goalies insurance. Whereas Seattle, it hasn't always been the case like that. And so you have to look at a guy like Grubauer. It seems like Grubauer really does, he relies heavily on that insurance in order to make sure that he gets wins, where a lot of times Jake Ottinger can flat out steal a game for a team in the Dallas Stars, but also the Stars, it's not uncanny for them, or it's not unnatural for them to go out and score, 3, 4, 5 goals in a game while only allowing 1 or 2 because of solid defense and solid goaltending. That this is going to be one of the many games within the game here, the goaltending battle, the defensive core battle, and there's plenty of guys to talk about up front as well offensively, and we're going to get into that more here as we approach the series start tomorrow on Tuesday, especially with Locked On Kraken. Erica Ayala over there should be a fun conversation with her, hopefully coming up soon, to dive into the numbers, dive into the nitty gritty, and get prepared for this series in a proper way where we can get the argument and the perspective from both sides of this matchup. But that is actually going to do it for today's episode. We should be back tomorrow, hopefully sometime, with a crossover episode with Erica over at Locked On Kraken to get you guys set for this first round series. Let me know in the comments down below what you expect in terms of who's going to win this series, how many games is it going to take, and who do you expect to be the quote-unquote MVP for the Stars in this series. Is Rope Hintz going to continue his heater? Will we see Jason Robertson reach Rope Hintz level production? Is Jake Ottinger going to continue to do what he's doing? Let me know in the comments down below your thoughts on this upcoming series against Seattle. And be sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube or your favorite podcasting platform. Find us on social media as well. Just search Locked On Stars on Instagram and Twitter, as well as my personal Twitter account at Dane_Lewis. Thank you guys for the continued support all throughout this season, especially now here in the Stanley Cup Playoffs. We'll be back here tomorrow to get you set for everything you need to know heading into Game 1, the Dallas Stars as they host the Seattle Kraken. But I hope you guys have a great Monday. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.